Joining us tonight to talk more about the situation in Afghanistan is Kamran Bokhari. He is the Director of Analytical Development at the Newslines Institute for Strategy and Policy in Washington. Kamran, thanks for joining us. First off, a group named ISIS-K has claimed responsibility for the bombings. What do we know about this group?
This is the Afghanistan-Pakistan chapter of ISIS that's headquartered in Iraq and Syria. It was founded around 2014-15 when ISIS declared its caliphate in Raqqa and Mosul on both sides of the Iraqi-Syrian border. Essentially, this group is made up of disaffected Afghan Taliban, Pakistani Taliban, anti-Shia Pakistani militants, people who are basically disillusioned with Al-Qaeda, perhaps Central Asian militants, and even Uyghur militants that are in this region.
Sounds like quite a dangerous mix. What type of threat do they pose to the people in Afghanistan?
So, Catherine, the issue right now is that the poor Afghan people are caught between extremism of one kind and an extremism of another. And the irony is that they have, to rely on the Taliban, a particular extremist group, to counter the other one. So this is a very, very bad situation. As far as their capabilities are concerned, look, they demonstrated this. This operation was very sophisticated. It took a lot of planning. They had intel on likely on when the Kabul government would fall, and they had probably calculated that it would lead to commotion and an evacuation process that they took advantage of.
As you mentioned, Kamran, this really puts the Afghan people in a difficult position. The Taliban has condemned the attack. Do you think they have the support of the people when it comes to fighting ISIS-K?
No, I think that the Afghan people are sadly so traumatized that they are without choice. I mean, what are they going to do? They have to live with the Taliban. But they hope that at least the Taliban are fellow Afghans, as opposed to this transnational group that has nothing to do with the country of Afghanistan, is just using it as a launchpad for a global caliphate to revive that was dismantled in 2017-18 in the Middle East. So I think that the people have no choice. But ultimately, I don't think the Taliban can do much about it, because the Taliban are caught in a conundrum between trying to be pragmatic because they need to do business with the outside world, not that they are the government or going to form the government, and the fact that their ideology is not very different from ISIS. Remember, since 2005, it's been the Taliban that have been, leading a barrage of unending suicide bombings and other forms of attacks that that ISIS built upon.
So those left in Afghanistan now are dealing with two terrorist organizations. For Afghans who still want out, Kamran, what's next for them?
I think that they will try by road, and as your report was suggesting earlier on, that it's very dangerous, and Canadian authorities are at least telling Canadian, Afghans of Canadian citizenship and permanent residence not to undertake that journey. But a lot of people, will try to, if they can, make their way to Iran or Pakistan. Some have already crossed the border into Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. And then there's not a whole lot of other choices there. So I think that there'll be an attempt by those people. And then a lot more people are just going to make peace with this situation. I mean, remember, this is a nation that's been traumatized by war for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Kamran, Canada has ended its mission in Afghanistan. The U.S. is days away from ending theirs, although U.S. President Biden did say they'll still work to get everyone out. But in your view, what role should the international community play at this point?
So this is the conundrum of the international community. You don't want to recognize the Taliban unless they, behave in a certain way that does not trample over the human rights of Afghans, particularly women and minorities. And so that gives us leverage. But then what happens if we try to exercise this leverage is that we don't have a good way of fighting ISIS. And more importantly, we're hurting the people there, because if we, not recognize and don't do business with with the Taliban, then the Taliban are not going to suffer. They, have enough money to sustain their group. But the question is, how are they going to run the government and help the nation, which is still going to be, millions of people. So that's something that the international community has to sort out. I think today's attacks have done one thing, is that pretty much sort of, made everyone realize that, look, if we're going to be, we're going to have to rely on the Taliban as much as they are terribly unreliable.
Mm-hmm. Certainly a difficult road ahead. Kamran, thank you very much for your insight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That was Kamran Bokhari, the Director of Analytical Development at the New Lines Institute for Strategy and Policy, joining us from Washington, D.C.